it's the time for us to start, and I'm going to turn it over to David to do his reading.
Well, thank you, Marty. And I'm glad you did, because Wendy and I have to leave right after to go to Phoenix to have lunch with our daughter and son-in-law. Isn't that
Oh
true?
my!
Oh, I'm so sorry. That was last week. We don't have to go this week. Forget it.
Okay,
We're here.
I was going to ask why 2 weeks in a row.
No, no, no. No, we're here. We're here. Yeah, wake up, David. Okay, today's quotation is from one of my very favorite books. It's from Henry David Thoreau's Walden. And they're actually a quotation about the night sky, and then I'm going to read the last few words of the book. Both place and time were changed, and I dwelt nearer to those parts of the universe and to those eras in history which had most attracted me. Where I lived was as far off as many a region viewed nightly by astronomers. We are wont to imagine rare and delectable places in some remote and more celestial corner of the system, behind the constellation of Cassiopeia's chair, far from noise and disturbance. I discovered that my house actually had its site in such a withdrawn, but forever new and unprofaned part of the universe. If it were worth the while to settle in those parts, near to the Pleiades or the Hyades, to Aldebaran or Altair, then I was really there, or at an equal remoteness from the life which I had left behind. And now the last words of Walden: the sun is but a morning star. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Very good. Yes, Gail.
May I read a appropriate closing midrash that I found? It's only 4 lines.
Sure.
Please.
God was giving Adam a tour of the Garden of Eden. And he said, and I quote, "See my works, how fine and excellent they are. Now all that I have created for you, have I created them. Think upon this, and do not corrupt and desolate my world, for if you corrupt it, there is no one to set it right after you."
Real great sound out of these speakers.
It's a very good one. Very good one.
You're nothing like heaping the guilt on us.
Well, it's we're the caretakers.
Yep.
We're the caretakers, and that's it.
We know that some people don't, but us, we do.
Okay, I'm going to read our opening prayer. Hi, Rabbi Mary.
Morning, Mary.
Hey.
And I'm just going to read, I'll do it in Hebrew this time. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
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 So we're going to backtrack just a little bit. And if somebody would like to read in Genesis 48, starting with verse 5.
What's the chapter? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Okay, it's Genesis 48
Okay.
and verse 5.
Okay. Now your 2 sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt shall be mine. Ephraim, Manasseh shall be mine. So no less than Reuben and Simeon. But Pogani born to you after them shall be yours. They shall be recorded instead of their brothers in their inheritance. I do this because when I was returning from Padan, Rachel died to my sorrow while I was journeying into the land of Canaan. When still some distance short of Ephraim, and then buried her there on the road to Ephraim. now Bethlehem.
Okay, let's stop there. And any further comments about this? We discussed last time that that this is a 17-year period, and surely during that time, Jacob got to be introduced to his grandsons after 17 years. And this is sort of important because there is in verse 8, which I want to read to everyone. This has been a major issue in dealing with explanation. So if one implies he's not going to, that he has not seen his grandchildren in 17 years, which is unlikely, and the other is that he's well aware of who they are. Okay? And so in verse 8, it says, noticing Joseph's sons, Israel asked, who are these? Now, I purposefully read this way, and it's 3 words that are very, very critical that will determine your interpretation. We already know that Jacob's vision has diminished and he's blind at this time. Okay, and it's going to be reemphasized in what we read in the next few verses. But the traditional interpretation has always been he's asking Joseph this question because he's blind and he can't see. And I'm going to take a sort of different position. I would like everyone to first discuss what your interpretation of this phrase, who are these?
Who are these?
Any ideas?
So what you are asking is, since he was blind, how he could ask that?
Yes, if after 17 years. Okay. Okay, Rabbi Mary, did you have something to add?
Yeah. I don't understand the question.
Okay,
Are you
the
asking
traditional
that
explanation
since he was blind, how could he see them?
The reason that that has been given traditionally is because in the next few verses, it explains it as his vision was poor. Okay,
Yeah.
he couldn't see them. Okay,
Right.
but we know other blind people living today. They really do use their other senses to determine who's who. Yes, David, and I see a whole flurry of hands. David had raised his hands first.
Okay, I'm thinking that this might be a significant example of depression, because it's like the old song, one of Wendy's favorite songs, that says, "Is this all there is?" He's being introduced to his grandchildren, but he can't see them. And blindness would easily lead to depression, and maybe that's what they're trying to teach us here.
I think that's a very good one. Now,
But Wendy disagrees. Hold on, Wendy.
okay. Well, go ahead, Wendy. Go
I
ahead.
just think like what you said, using the other senses, he knows his sons are all there, and he's thinking, do I have 2 more grandchildren? Do these, are they mine in a way? That's what came to me immediately.
Very
So,
good.
anyway.
Very good. Now, I don't know, there were several hands that went up simultaneously. And I know Helene has to leave usually on the earlier side. So I'm going to call on her first.
Well, I really appreciate your understanding my physical condition. Okay. There must be a way that he knew they were there from what you read. He knew they were there. It could have been depression, certainly. I wonder, what did you say? Who are these? Is that what you,
It says, yes, who are these?
now, if he couldn't see anything, and the issue for me, or the question that came to me, is did he ever touch the grandchildren in 17? He may have had touching. Children love old people. Honest to God,
Mhm.
they adore them, especially if they're warm and comforting. They want hugs. He may have been touching these kids.
Okay.
Now, who are these?
Okay. Yeah, good. That's a good way of putting it. Okay. Ricky is next, and then Suzanne.
He probably has Alzheimer's or dementia or something. And he doesn't remember, even if he saw them yesterday, he wouldn't remember them today. So, who's this?
Okay.
And anybody who's worked with an old person who's got signs of dementia.
Okay, that's another possibility.
Yeah.
That's another possibility. Suzanne. Oh, wait a minute, Michael. I thought, yeah, the pictures jumped around on me, and so I remember Dawn's hand was up, and also Michael's. So let Michael go first, then Dawn, and then
Fine.
Suzanne.
Okay.
Michael, you're muted.
Unmute. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And I was thinking along the lines of perception. He is he believing that's really his children and grandchildren? Is he thinking that there may be something there, and his perception of what's going on, or something to that effect?
Very good. Very good. Don?
Susan was before me, if you.
Oh, okay. Okay, Susan,
okay.
and then Don. Thank you, Don, for everything shuffled. I couldn't. Okay, go ahead, Suzanne.
Okay, thank you, Don. I'm not surprisingly, I look at this a little differently. I think maybe Jacob's eyesight might be failing him, maybe cataracts or glaucoma or something like that. But I think he was by saying, who are these? I think he was getting ready to declare his 2 grandsons as his own 2 sons. And that was his way of leading it into that.
Okay.
And that Joseph didn't, well, I guess we haven't read that far, but Joseph didn't pick up on that right away.
Okay. Very good. Don.
Yeah, 2 things, Marty. One is I'd like to know again the Hebrew and the.
I have to defer to Mary.
And the how those words are associated and what typically they mean in other contexts. It's just 3 words, but that's usually where you run into trouble when it looks so simple. And the other is that, again, I'm really sensitive to the emphasis on genealogy in these chapters. And now as soon as any question about genealogy pops up, I know it's going to be really important. And so to be able to identify children.
Now,
super.
Don, what was the question about the Hebrew? What did you want to know exactly?
What's the literal interpretation of who are these
Yeah, and how are those words
in Hebrew?
in other
How is it
contexts?
written?
Yeah, yeah. It's just who are these? Me, Eile. Who are these? There is no the verb to be does not exist in Hebrew. So it says who are, without the are, these people. Now, I think that Michael shares with me something about seeing. I had, and I still have, a hole in one of my retinas that could not be saved. I mean, it could not be fixed. So I don't know about you, Michael, but if I looked with my bad eye, I see all kinds of figures, but I couldn't say who's who. But I do see figures. So now I don't know, and I need to check again my concordance, the word for blind, and certainly in the Talmud, I'm sure of that, because the blind, this is an extra, the blinds cannot give testimony. So that's in court, they cannot give testimony. But here it doesn't say blind, it doesn't say iver. It says kavdu mizoken. His eyes were heavy from old age. So it can be macular degeneration. When I go to the ophthalmologist, I see everyone my age sitting there. So it could be that he saw, as you said, figures. I don't build on he could smell them, but who knows. But what's interesting the most to me here, if you remember how Jacob and his mama Rivkale cheated on Isaac that could not see. Isaac could not see. Was Isaac? Yeah, he could not see. So they fooled him. They said, okay, this is Esau and this is Jacob. And what goes around comes around. Is that what we say?
Another good interpretation.
Now Jacob is getting it. He cannot see them. Gail?
Okay.
Gail, you're muted.
Okay, Michael and then Gail.
Well, yeah. One other thought came to mind is that the fact it could be as simple as the fact that he is blind. When they're blind and old age, that combination can just confuse somebody and just fall into a situation where his unfortunately his mind would not be operating very well and not understanding and seeing.
Okay. Gail. Gail, you're going to have to unmute yourself.
I'm going to take a different tack. Perhaps it's
Good.
a leading question. And the question he's really asking is, of what significance are these people? Are they important and why? So I'm thinking maybe it's a leading question.
Okay, now I'm going to go into, sorry, I'm sorry, Joanne.
I just put it up, I was,
But you're going to have to move closer to the screen.
okay,
You're very faint when you sit back.
okay. I've been listening to all this and it's like, yes, that's correct, that's correct.
Speak up, please.
Oh, okay. I've been
Shout.
listening. I've been listening to everything and I'm thinking, yes, she's correct, he's correct, etc.
Yeah.
But I really think he's asking, who are these? do they belong to the Israeli God? Do they belong to my God? Or had they been trained to belong to the Egyptian God? That was my first thought when I read it.
Okay, now I'm going to read
Very
something.
good.
I'm going to read something from another source. That's excellent. That's excellent. And it is from the book Wonderworks. We have spoken about this book before, but it is written in a style of English that has been lost and in the modern age. But it takes a while to go through to try to understand the meanings of why those words are where they are. This is the former way of writing, and it's foreign to our youth, but to us, we may still remember some of this. And he's quoting from a line from stated. This is a line from well, it's hard to say right now because of my thinking, but it's from James Baldwin's "Go Tell It on the Mountain." And in this line, and there's a line, he lifted up his head and he saw tears mingled with his sweat. The Lord, he said, he sees the heart. He sees the heart. So it depends on which word you emphasize. Does he see the heart? Does he see the heart? Does he see the heart? And you suddenly realize now in these three words, it depends upon which word you place the emphasis.
Right.
So you have to reread this multiple times to get different meanings. And traditionally, it's always been who are these? Okay, or who are these?
Right.
But maybe the emphasis was who are these? And I think this dovetails into Joanne's interpretation. So Don and then Michael.
Yeah, that's kind of why I asked about the Hebrew, because as the rabbi pointed out, there's no verb to be.
Correct.
So now we're down to two words. And so the emphasis has to be on one or the other. And so I was wondering if the emphasis is on the who, then now we're talking about divine ownership. And that's
Correct.
why it seemed to me that there would be some indication in the context that who would have a capital W or something to indicate that it's not just a mortal who. I'm still flying blind here. But,
Very good.
Anyway, I appreciate your question, Mark. That really brightens the light quite a bit.
We have to remember the discussion we had about bowing at the head of the bed. Okay, is it a silent hineni? Is it a silent I'm here? And is this the beginning of Jacob the prophet at that moment. So what Jacob is speaking, is it necessarily Jacob speaking or God telling Jacob what to say? Because it's going to lead to multiple interpretations. And but this train of thought, it feeds into the rest of the story. It's like I've been told to say this. And if I say, and so the concept, who, is the emphasis here. Who are these kids really? And which, as you say, which direction are they going to take?
Who are they following? Right.
That's right. Which line of thinking? So that's Michael. I'm sorry. I was responding to Don, but I apologize for taking so long. Yes.
No, that's okay, Marty. I don't want you to apologize for that.
Well, it's okay. Thank you.
But I appreciate it. But thank you so much. I don't want to change the subject, but I was just compelled based on the person you were quoting there.
Yes.
And there was something you said, tears mingled with sweat.
Okay.
You said in that, the tears mingled with sweat, I believe is what you said.
Yes.
Now, like I said, I don't want to change anything, but I have a question and a comment, I guess. When you say sweat, that really doesn't apply to you. People perspire, they don't sweat. Animals Hello? Oh, did they?
Yeah. No, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah, I thought that you froze. I'm sorry. So
It's
that's
okay. I'm just reading something.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's what I'm asking about that particular, those words, tears mingled with sweat. When people perspire, animals sweat. That's all I wanted to say about that. And see if you have a response to that.
Well, but people who are working, okay, if you're a slave to something,
Right.
and you work, you may bemoan the fact that you are a slave, but at the same time you toil, and so you sweat and cry simultaneously.
Now, Michael, I suggest that you go to Genesis with the creation of the world. When Adam and Eve misbehaved and they were sent out, God says to the men, to Adam and his descendants, you're going to earn your living with the sweat or the toil of your work. And it says ze'at, which I don't think that in Hebrew there is a differentiation between perspiring and sweating. I sweat, I'm telling you. I just
Well, that's, I was going to actually say that I don't know what the Hebrew interpretation, I'm just trying to apply what I would believe would be a proper English because of we're speaking in English. And so regardless, it would still be my position that animals sweat and people perspire. That would be my, no matter what the situation is, Marty. That would be my interpretation. That's all.
Okay. Well, it depends on the writer how he wants to make it appear to us.
Right. And you mentioned slaves, and slaves are still people.
Yes, but perspiration is a too kind way of saying sweat.
Right. Okay.
If somebody is really hard work, slaving away, it's sweat. It's like an animal. Okay. Any other comments? So I think that, yes, Rabbi Mary.
Okay, I want for us to see, this is a movie or a theater setting. We see Yaakov, he's lying down, or maybe he's sitting now. He'll lie down when he dies, so he probably is sitting. He's sitting, his eyes are not very good. What a person in our tradition does before dying is one is vidui, which they tell what they regret, etc., etc. That we think that is not in Judaism, but it is. But the second one is the blessings that we give. Do you remember Isaac, just before dying, he blessed this and he blessed this, and this stole from here and stole from there, but it's the blessing. So he is in a state of blessing. So here appear two more shapes of people. I said, what are these? I'm blessing my sons here. Why are they doing here? I mean, it's like someone that doesn't belong. I know how many children I have. I bless them all. And here, two more they bring me. Where did they found it? So one of the things that we have in Rashi talking about is that what Yosef says is, these are my children. And let me say, Abba, they are kosher. They are not made, that they were not made in an inappropriate way with someone that didn't belong. And this is an explanation, it is not written there, but what he wants to say, present them as real his sons. And by the being a kosher son, that the blessing that you wanted to give me passes to them. It will be appropriate for them to become, and it says here, Yaakov says they're going to be to me like Reuven and Shimon, meaning they're going to be like two sons. So here we have two figures that he cannot recognize. He probably doesn't see them clearly, and he gives them a blessing as if they were two of his sons. With this, and that means, guys, it's not, oh, you're my son. It's that you're going to inherit just like the rest of my children, which means a piece of land. You're going to be a tribe, the head of a tribe, and they appear as tribes. If you go to Temple Green Valley and look at the tribes, you're going to see Ephraim and Manasseh being tribes. But they were not, they don't appear when he talks about all the stories of sending Joseph with his nice coat, etc., etc. They are born now to become part of the family. They are not adopted. They are from the lineage. They are pure blood, kosher, two more children. Sorry,
And that is the traditional interpretation. We haven't read those lines yet, but yes. But the reason I was talking about it's the English word to see, and you don't necessarily have to see with your eyes. You can see with your mind, and you can see with your ears, and you can see with your taste, and you get understanding, and you see what's going on around. I know I've stimulated some hands here, but what I'm concerned about is if we only look at this as a literal interpretation and a traditional interpretation, there are other ways we can apply this, and we see that this is all the prophet speaking. He's Israel. He's not called Jacob at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Now, Michael, I'm going to put you on hold because David has his hand up and Don has his hand up. And I believe there was one other person. Grace, did you want to say something too? Okay. So let me do David, Don, Grace, and Michael.
Thank you. I wanted to return a little bit to the interpretation of depression. as somebody who has had a lot of experience in his life with depression, I have learned over the years that there can be beauty and really great joy in going through a depression. And one of the ideas about that with Jacob is that he's remembering from a few verses earlier that God had blessed him and said, "Behold, I will make thee fruitful and multiply, and I will make of thee a company of peoples, and I'll give this land," and et cetera, et cetera. And he's now being reintroduced to his grandchildren. And he's thinking, even though there's not much left, there's enough left that he can enjoy his family, enjoy his grandchildren, and hopefully try to get some joy out of what's left in his life. Thanks.
Good point. Good point. Yes, Don.
Thank you, Rabbi, for that insight. And that takes me back around to one of my earlier questions about genealogy. I have the clear idea of what I was asking about, because Joseph is in a land, we don't know anything about Joseph's wife, I would think. And so,
She's Egyptian.
right. And so it seems to me like it's super important that where these kids came from is critical in terms of the lineage going forward. And so it's really on Jacob Israel to make that decision at this point. And
Good point.
And he, you know, in those days didn't have DNA tests. So, you know, and it was only certain who the mother was, but it was never certain who the father was. And so Jacob now has to move the entire Hebrew lineage forward with this one decision, without having all the information, or only his, as Marty, you said.
We are right now way ahead of where we are, what we have been discussing. Rabbi Mary took us in a direction that's skipping over the next two paragraphs in the Torah. So before we do all that, let's come back to the discussion at hand. Yes, Michael.
Okay, a moment ago you said you can see with your mind.
Yeah.
See with your mind. And that's very powerful, because that's what you call, I believe, circumstantial evidence, in sort of speaking. And it makes you think. It creates a picture in your mind, and sometimes that can be more powerful than something direct when it makes you think. And I could apply, if you don't mind, an example, if I may. Not too long ago, Louis Farrakhan said Adolf Hitler was a great man. He never mentioned the word Jew, but he said that. And so when you think about it, it makes you think that's a very anti-Semitic statement. And I'm just applying an example. That's all I'm doing.
Okay.
See?
Appreciate it. Thank you. Grace, I think you had your hand up, and I apologize if I'm skipping over anyone.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Nice kitty cat, Gail. Her cat threw me off in a different direction. I saw these spots in this. There it is again. She's a nice kitty. So my entire thought, and this is where we actually are in the Torah, was, you know, he's establishing the right to the inheritance by choosing his grandsons as rightfully inheriting what should be theirs because of the lineage, which is, you know, similar to what Don just said. And I wanted to just comment on his lack of being able to virtually see something. how many of us have been around our clans member, our tribe members, our family that have small children? They reach out to touch everything. So it's my guess that, you know, he was around them long enough to have felt them in his heart, in his mind. His sense of smell probably picked up on those things as well. And, you know, wanted to be all inclusive. This is, even though they were born in the Egyptian part of the land and not in Canaan, that they should be equally allowed the abundance of what is to come as our whole livelihood and continuance of our people, period. That's how I see it. And I don't mean to be closed-minded about it, but that's just what I felt the whole lesson was about in
Good
these
points.
these
Good
verses.
points.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
But I want to ask a question to the group, and I'm wondering, I don't know the answer. Jacob could have blessed Joseph and give him a tribe and give him a land and give him a banner. Why didn't he do that? Why the story tell us that he blessed the two sons? Because Joseph could have done that, you know, when he dies, he said, you know, the two of you break your head and see how you deal with it. Because Judah and Reuben and Shimon, they all had children and they had to deal with how they decide what to do. But why didn't he bless Yosef directly, knowing that he is his son?
It's an excellent question. I'll turn, yes, Don had his hand up first.
I think, Rabbi, that it was because it had to be decided whether those two kids were legitimate at that point. Otherwise, there was no place for them in what follows. If Jacob had blessed Joseph, then the kids are sort of left stranded as being an unknown part of the Hebrew lineage. That's my take anyway.
But let's say that someone who put the story down, okay, or whatever you believe why the story is there, why the story take us to these two figures that are his son, and why don't we go directly to blessing Yosef? Why this is incorporated in the story? I'm just wondering.
Okay. Yes, Bev.
It's possible that that God felt that the two sons were equal and that they shouldn't be fighting over, getting the father's share.
Well, okay. That is another good idea. But what about, okay, I have Grace and then Joanne and Suzanne. Go ahead, Grace.
I believe that he saw the children as the future to the lineage, period. You know, the grandchildren, they're the future to the lineage. And he could feel and see well enough or touch them and understood their behavior and their dimensions that, yeah, we're related. You know, the behaviors, the texture of the hair, perhaps, just any of those features probably put upon his heart to say, yeah, this is part of, our tribe, our clan. This is, and I know that as a teacher, I have my best teachers myself have been my students. They've always taught me something that I hadn't realized. I'm just thinking along those lines. That's all. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good point. Now,
But
Joanne.
why he did not? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Grace. Not Grace.
Joanne.
Gary. Hi, Gary. I'm sorry, Gary. Now, just a quick answer. So why didn't they do the same thing with the rest of the sons? Instead of blessing the sons, they could bless the grandchildren. And it's their lineage. My question is why taking the grandchildren here and not the father as he did with the others?
Okay. That's another question, but let's hear from Joanne and then Suzanne and then Ruth Ann. I guess the Anns have it.
Interesting.
Lean closer to your computer,
Okay,
Joanne.
sorry. I'm thinking of this as Joseph has been called and he brings his son, but everyone else is possibly close around.
We can hardly hear you. We can hardly hear you, Joanne.
Okay, well, I have it on as loud as possible. Everyone else that is around. In other words, all the sons are probably there, and maybe the oldest to the youngest has been coming through. They've all been receiving blessings, but for
Yes.
thank you, but for Jacob, this son that was lost that has now been found is most important to him, and she is also Rebecca's child, Rachel's child. I'm sorry, but he's blessed everybody. But here he can smell that these two grandsons smell differently because they are probably in Egyptian clothes with perfumes on and other things. So who are these? Is this someone I don't know? And then when he's told, but I really think that he's looking for, are these really people, my children, that I need to bless, that I need to talk to, etc.
Okay.
I see
Okay.
a huger thing than what we're looking at here.
Very good. Suzanne and then Marcia. Oh, and Ruth Ann and then Marcia. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Okay. This is the math part of me coming out. We need Ephraim and Manasseh to make 12 tribes for Israel, because the tribe of Levi are the priests and they don't have any land. And even when the Israelites are wandering around in the desert there, and they're given places to set up camp. I think that's in Numbers. It would, if it was just Joseph, it would be 11 and not 12. So we need Ephraim and Manasseh to make it 12, and then that's it.
That's another interpretation that has been out there. Okay, I have Ruth Ann, then Marcia. If I got that straight, okay.
Okay, my thinking is, out of Jacob's whole clan, I mean, who all has God ever blessed? He's blessed Jacob and he's blessed Joseph directly. Maybe Jacob is thinking, since Joseph has already gotten God's direct blessing, who am I to be able to bless Joseph? I'm just a mere person, you know? So instead of blessing Joseph, Jacob went and blessed his sons because, like I said, he's not above God as far as giving blessings.
Very, very good point.
Mm-hmm.
Very good point. Okay, yes, Marcia.
I keep
And then
thinking,
Ricky.
Why he said they are mine, like Ephraim, like Reuben and Simeon, he went back to his first. Is it that he has to complete something, or he has to justify that he's doing this? I don't know why he didn't say all of them, why he went back to the first two.
Your question is very important because it will be answered when on his deathbed, from what he says to each one of his children
Right.
on his deathbed. So what you say is very important. But Ricky.
Yeah, I want to go back to what Susan was saying. What's so magical about the number 12? I mean, so there would be 11 tribes. And to me, it seems like 10 is a good number because we got 10 fingers and 10 toes. You know, so what was there magic in this number 12?
Mhm.
So that's another whole question.
No, but I understand where you're coming from. That, or does he see that already as the prophet? If we, you know, the deathbed statement is prophecy. It is not, this is what I give you, this is what and so forth. It is prophecy for the future. So this is all part of the preamble to this prophecy, what we're going through now. And if he understands that there have to be 12 tribes now, that may be good enough for what comes next.
But why 12? The number. I mean, why pick that number?
Maybe it comes from a higher source. Because if he has already been, if we assume that he has, by his Hineni moment, that he is assuming he is being granted the role of prophet at this time. He sees all of these things that he's doing in order to fulfill God's prophecy and what he has been taught by his parents and grandparents and great-grandparents. Okay. Yeah, first Rabbi Mary, then Suzanne.
Okay, Suzanne. Levi, the only difference, Levi did not get a piece of land, true, but they got the very, very important job of taking care of the temple. Without them, and there is no one cleaning the blood of the sacrifices. They need the Levites for that. Yes, they didn't get a land, but as I'm listening to all of you, I said, oh, Yaakov, Jacob, you're screwing up again. Sorry. He preferred Joseph. He gave him the coat and he did this and he did that. Now look what he's doing. He's giving him twice the amount of land, the amount of blessing, the amount of whatever is left. From Joseph, instead of calling Joseph one land or one
share,
descendant, he gets two. Yaakov, didn't you learn anything? What happens when you prefer one son to another? But he does it again. He does it again. His love for Yosef never ended despite everything that happened. Now, I want to clarify to everyone, Grace, when we're talking about blessing in this context, and we saw that in the blessing of Yaakov and Esav, that Isaac blessed. It's not saying, oh, I blessed you, that you're going to get a nice wife and you to have many kids. The blessing is very concrete. And as Marty said, we're going to see it in a moment. But you need to remember how important is your place among the brothers. And that's why Yaakov stole to be the first. And secondly, what you get, it's not so esoteric as today, you know, an abstract blessing, very nice. It's giving the person something. So it's giving yourself twice.
Okay.
I'm cynical or what?
Any other comment? I forgot who else may have had. Yes, Suzanne. Yes.
Yeah, I like that idea of Joseph getting a double portion for the blessing through his children. But what I was thinking when I had commented about not the land, I needed to be more clear. When the Israelites were on their journey through the wilderness, they were assigned camp spots according to the compass, around the 4 points. So by having 3 tribes at each point, that made for 12. But I that's what I was getting at. And certainly it did not mean to diminish the importance of the Levites, because it was necessary. But they weren't part of those 4 points. They encircled the tabernacle, as I understood from. I think it was in Numbers. Sometimes I get.
Well, but what we're doing, we have it by understanding what everything that's been stated, we are making we are looking at it as prophecy. We are looking to the future. Every one of these examples are what's going to happen 400 to 500 years later.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's not present at this time, and these are the discussions. I want to add that one of the things that he's saying that Israel is saying to Joseph, he is saying to Joseph, Reuben is no longer. Okay, I disinherit him as my firstborn.
Right.
I'm giving Reuben would normally get my double share,
Right.
and everyone else would have everything thereafter. But he's now saying Joseph is my heir to receive the double share. And that is very important, because what is part of the double share? Going back to the discussions that we had about Esau, what Abraham has to say to Esau and Isaac, and in the blessings, and what does Isaac say when he's also blind? Does he say about the double share and the single share in his blessings? Part of the double share is the immaterial, the spiritual, or the God-given part of the share. The other, the physical share, is totally different.
Right.
So now Joseph indirectly, through his 2 sons, is getting it. Joseph, and now think for a minute, what would happen? And this is where we have to think back, put ourselves in the shoes of the different characters. What would happen if Israel gives the blessings to Joseph? What is Joseph's status in Egypt?
Leadership.
who is he working for?
Pharaoh.
And who would be the actual recipient of that gift? Joseph or the Pharaoh?
Pharaoh.
Correct. And therefore, he would not be fulfilling the prophecy if he gives Joseph directly the double share. And we have to give the guy some credit for a little thinking too. Or is it God that's inspiring this decision-making method? I don't know. I'm just saying, because we have to read into it. Yes, Chris, please.
Thank you, Marty. I agree with that. I believe all of this is hand carried by God and worked it out from his point of view on how the nation is going to survive. It's a test, all of this, on how they can rely on God and rely on each other for help. And I also agree with Rabbi Mari in regard to the blessing. It is also a responsibility when they're blessing you and they're telling you that you have now the ability to do what God commands of you to do. And so it's not so much as, hooray, happy, I'm blessed, but that I know I'm carrying a different load for my people, a different responsibility for my people, and accountability, and everything else goes with that as well. So I definitely believe that God is at hand and that he has provided for every single way on how this is going to play out. From the beginning. And I think how in my life anyway, is are you willing to do it my way, Chris? Or are you going to do it your way, Chris? That's the difference between, are we going to make it? Or we're going to delay 11 years getting to the promised land, you know?
Now, with what Chris just said, Chris, would you read verse 9? Oh, you don't have, do you have a book?
Yeah, I have it, but I don't know 9 where. Is that what chapter?
Okay, it's chapter 48, verse 9.
All right, thank you. 48:9 says, and Joseph said to his father, they are my sons, whom God has given me here. And he said, bring them to me, if you please, and I will bless them.
Okay. Now, there are different, remember we started today's discussion with the emphasis of different words. Is Joseph saying to Israel, they are my sons?
What God gave him to.
Or is he saying in a diminished voice, they are my sons whom God has given me here?
Right.
The emphasis is on God.
Absolutely.
This is the answer to the question that Israel posed. Okay, who are these sons? God has granted them to Joseph.
Right.
And so he remembers now, as Israel can now remember, he still knows his heritage and who these children are.
Right.
Okay.
Beautiful.
And so it changes everything that comes, and it makes sense of what he's about to do and why. If we just say that Joseph says, here, take my sons and do with them as you please, that we have to do that on a huge leap of faith that this is, the outcome is going to go the way that Joseph is still going to be happy with this. But if we look at it in this fashion, Joseph is voluntarily giving his own two sons to receive the blessing. And then we can go into the wording of this about blessing and like that. And then it makes a lot more sense so that the prophecy can be fulfilled. It's already been mentioned. So through, and we've spoken about this very thing about the Joseph story, which I've always said is within the Jacob story. But the Joseph story, he does things, he always attributes his interpretations to God, what God has said to him. Okay? So if indeed he has this, we've opened the door, could he have had other dreams that this is what he must do in his interpretation of those dreams? I don't know. It's not stated. But in order for all of this to occur, we have to take these few sentences apart. And that's why I wanted to do this. So Chris, you touched on what I think is a very important aspect of this. I know we've lost Rabbi Miri for a while, but Marcia, I saw you, did you want to say something?
I just agree with you. I agree that this is God talking all the time through his thoughts, especially when he speaks to other people.
Okay, because once we look at it this way, this all fits together, and we don't have to come up with a lot of different midrash, a lot of different explanations for everything, if we take this approach. It's true, what everyone has brought up, those are the traditional interpretations, and they are correct. But it still leaves a huge gap in my thinking if we go with the traditional interpretations, that we have to read deeper into the wording and which words do we emphasize in what's being said. Yes, Don.
I can empathize a little bit. I worked overseas for many years, and both my sons were born overseas. But I worked on a visa, so it was always precarious, no matter how many years went by. And but my sons automatically had American citizenship. So my question here is, were Joseph's sons circumcised?
That question has come up before by Wendy. And Wendy, you asked me that question a long time ago. And I said, we'll eventually get to it where we can address it a little bit.
Here we are.
Wendy, do you remember what we discussed?
Yeah, because we wondered about Joseph. Yeah, we did. We wondered because he was not with his Jewish family.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, he was in Egypt, he might not have been.
What did the Egyptians practice circumcision?
And
no.
Yes.
You think?
Yeah, they did.
But they did.
Yeah.
They did?
I remembered.
That's
Marty,
right.
I can listen.
It is very interesting. This comes from a discussion on this very topic and I'll just quote a few things. Okay. There's an article by Alice Lindsay entitled "Just Genesis." Circumcision objects dating back to 4000 BC were found among the ruins in Nekhen in ancient Israel. It was an Egyptian cult that practiced sexual rituals at that site. They also worshiped the sun god.
Thank God. Yeah, we need that.
Okay. And then it goes on to say from an article by the Grim Historian by Carlin, I don't know if it's Bechia or Bekia. The practice of circumcision dates back to at least 2,400 years BC in Egypt.
Oh.
So there is also a very detailed description on the doorway leading to the tomb of Akhmaho, the vizier to King Teti in the 6th Pharaohic dynasty. Interesting. So the answer to Don's question is a resounding yes. The Egyptians also practiced that. Okay, Gail.
Yeah, except keep in mind that 400 years later, Moses was never circumcised.
Okay. But we can get into that discussion later. Okay, was he or wasn't he? And that he wasn't, and possible reasons why. Okay. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Just a quickie one. I was trying to see what are the wordings when they talk about the blindness of Isaac. So in the blindness of Isaac, what it says, don't tell me I lost it.
I know the feeling.
Here it says he has trouble seeing because he's old. Okay, this is about now, Yaakov. And well, I'll remember that. And in Isaac, it says he could not see, his eyes were heavy and he could not see. The sea appears there. So it seems like Isaac was completely blind, and Yaakov just couldn't see because of his old age, which it could be cataracts or what I have or what Michael has, or, you know, a lot of things that come with age. Keep going. I have to make sure I see it.
Okay. Any other discussion? We haven't gotten very far, but it is. I think it's important that we set the stage for what is probably Jacob's great moment in Genesis. Okay. So if any other discussion or questions that we have gone over already. Oh, okay. Then why don't, if somebody would like to read.
I wouldn't mind reading.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Verses 10 and 11.
Okay, here we go. Verse 10. Now the eyes of Israel were dim for age, so that he could not see. And he brought them near unto him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said unto Joseph, I had not thought to see thy face, and lo, God hath let me see thy seed also.
Okay. Any ideas about what we have just read? Well, we can take it in the traditional and also the literal sense, or as we were exploring before, we can take it in the, what should I say, the philosophical sense.
Right.
Okay, Wendy. I think it's Wendy and not David because
Yes,
of the way David raises his hand.
It's me. When what you just read about Jacob being so happy to see his seed, so to speak,
Mhm.
it was like, it reminded me of my dad. My dad was all about family, and family was first. And suddenly Jacob realized not only was Joseph there, but he had grandchildren. His family was now bigger, and it's all about family.
Yes,
I agree with that.
it
Yes.
is. It is. Okay, Chris.
Yes, I read this and I can't help thinking it is like a dream coming true. Like nothing that I ever thought that could ever happen to me. Not only will I see Joseph again, but now I'm seeing the children. I'm touching the children. I'm hugging the children. This is something that emotionally has to be the top of everything you ever wanted in your life for me.
Very good. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Well, actually, I was checking the words here, and what Yaakov says, he says, it's not, I never thought about, I won't see my kids, certainly not my grandkids from you, Joseph, but I did not pray, lo pilalti. I did not pray that I'll see my children. Ani lo pejadid. I did not pray, and here I'm seeing my children. So there is a little twist here. It's like I didn't even ask God for this. I did not. Like my expectation was so strong that I didn't even pray for it. That's the Hebrew word.
Interesting, because yes, and then we can emphasize God in all of this.
Right.
Okay, yes, Ruth Ann.
Marty, I was just wondering, are we assuming a chronological order to what we've been reading that maybe isn't really here? I mean, could this story here have been when they just came from Canaan, still in the height of the famine, and that maybe Jacob has never met these sons? I mean, the Torah is famous for that, for, flashbacks that you don't even know are really occurring. But could we be having one of those? And at this point, could Jacob really have nothing to give to his descendants? He has no land. I mean, the land really belongs to Pharaoh no matter what. I mean, he has a bunch of sheep and maybe cattle and stuff, but, but is he truly just, arrived and just meeting them for the first time? Or even at that point, could the mother have said, hey, these are Egyptian kids, forget the Jewishness and, and whatever, he could still be meeting them for the first time.
Well, actually, what you just said is out of the Quran.
Oh.
Okay.
Didn't read
they
that.
have a totally different take on this.
Yeah.
And they okay, they have their reasons for doing that because they want to diminish the relationship with God.
Oh, I'm not diminishing that at all.
No, but if you look at it from that standpoint, you have to question all of Judaism, all of the lineage and all of the things that God has promised the Jewish people.
Whoa.
And that's their, no, I'm just saying, this is their motivation. And that has come up innumerable times. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Well, one of the Talmudic, not halachot, but midrashim, is that these two guys, got the blessings because they kept Judaism in the sense they spoke Hebrew, and probably since there's a non-chronicle decision, they were studying Talmud, or just in Jacob was studying Talmud, and those two kids too. But because it's asked, why are they blessed? And one of the drashot is because they kept Judaism in the sense, probably they had candles every Shabbat and whatever.
Okay.
But that's one of the reasons.
Okay. Yes, Gail. And then Joanne. Oh, I thought you were going to say something, Gail. Okay, Joanne.
I'm confused. Wait a minute. I'm confused. I'm reading this and I'm thinking that the children were already born when, when Jacob came, okay, 17 years before, and I'm thinking older children. However, in the next sentence, sentence 12, it says, Joseph then removed them, meaning the two children, from his knees. That means they were very young. So could these two children have been conceived after Jacob came and with a Jewish woman?
What's the verse that you're quoting? Joanne, what's the verse that you're quoting about the knees?
12.
Oh, we're not there
We
yet.
were going to, we've sort of jumped ahead.
Yeah,
Again.
yeah, we're not there.
But Joanne, you never finished the verse.
And
read the second half of that verse.
After he removed him from his knees, he bowed low with his face to the ground.
Okay.
But how can children be on your knees? You remove them, but if they're on your knees, they're little children. They aren't big children.
Okay. But is that important in the story first? Let's ask that. And why? Why do you emphasize that?
Small.
The reason I've always thought that they were already born when Jacob came 17 years before, but I don't know if that makes me question, were they not born? Are these children conceived after Jacob was there and there were Jewish girls and Joseph took a wife and had these two children? I'm not sure.
Okay. Anybody? Well, what is the sequence in everything as it shows up in the Torah? I know we read, there is an answer to your question.
Sure.
Okay, all it does, it says that this is occurred. It could be that they're young, but it could also mean that they are grown. That's all I can say. You take your pick, but in my mind, it is not critical. It is not critical because of what is about to happen.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
I can accept that, but I just thought maybe they were, do we know who?
I think they're younger. I think they're younger because it says sometime afterward, Joseph was told, and he gathers up his sons and brings him the sons to Jacob, and that's after it says that Jacob lived 17 years in the land of Egypt, so that the span of his life came to, and et cetera, et cetera. And then, and all this is occurring while Joseph is already sworn one thing to Jacob, and that is to take his remains after he dies back to the cave of
Cave of Mimra.
Macbeth.
Mamre?
Well, I always get tongue-tied with it. Macbeth or something.
Mamre, isn't it?
Because to be buried with Isaac and Abraham and
Right.
his
And
grandmother.
Sarah.
So I'm trying to find.
Would you guys please look at the chats? Messages are sent to the chat and some are not answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perhaps to create the idea of equality. Okay, yes. Okay, from Grace. Yes, she has a knack of doing that. It's a good point. But all these are good, but we're going to find out that equality is not the case. Definitely not the case. Okay? Because of the way the blessing is done. And what we're seeing now, somebody said, okay, they're on his knees. So let's assume they're younger. Okay? And assume that they are on the knees, and now he is going to put them, remove them from his knees.
Okay.
But what is the first thing that Joseph does?
Bows.
Do you want us to read 13?
He bows.
Yeah.
Not only to his father Jacob, but he is speaking to Israel. So he's bowing to Israel. And is he also sensing this is God's will? Because both men are because he is saying that God has given him the children.
Right.
And is it that he understands what Jacob is saying is part of the prophecy that he has been, that his eyes have been opened to? That Israel's eyes have been opened to. And that will come out shortly. Because if that line is followed, then what follows makes a lot more sense about bowing down. It's not just acknowledging it, but also acknowledging the will of God.
Mm-hmm.
So there's more to this than what first meets the eye. It's not just father and son and the implications and everything, because in a way, the double blessing is going to bring the spiritual blessing as well by doing it this way, and that the Israelites will survive. This will contribute to their survival. And that's Joseph's blessing in disguise. The children will be taken, but his blessing will be knowing that his progeny will go on to fulfill the prophecy that God said to Abraham and Isaac and his father Jacob. So it's coming to another head. In other words, this is another part of the story. And Rabbi Mary, I'm so glad you brought up the relationship with the statements early on in Genesis. And we also, I don't think you were here when we spoke about the answer to Cain's question. Am I my brother's keeper?
Right.
And all of a sudden it's answered in this Joseph story. with a resounding yes.
Yes, you are.
And so that's why I think that when we tie this all together, it starts to make much more sense. Not only from the spiritual standpoint of looking at how God may be looking at this over all these centuries, all these generations, and versus what man's question was at the outset, and how it is also being answered in the book of Genesis. So I think that we're about to see a lot, and you have two men here, Israel and Joseph, who have been granted, if you will, prophecy, the wisdom of prophecy in different ways. And they're going to be discussing this through the children and what's about to happen. And that's why I said, and it leads up to the next climax in Genesis, if you will. Any other discussions? We have plenty of time to explore this. So now let's go with, yes, Chris.
Gail,
Oh, Gail, I'm sorry. I apologize. I was looking
No,
at.
you were looking down.
Okay, go ahead,
Marty-
Gail, and then Chris.
Marty, were you implying that Joseph thought of his father as Israel rather than Jacob? Because I thought we cleared this up a class or two ago, that the only one who used the word Israel was God. No one else recognized him by any other name but Jacob, as far as, or am I wrong? Maybe I misunderstood. What you
Well,
were
once
saying.
you see that there's a higher order of things that this is all drosh, okay, midrash, and from about drosh. But if you look at this, you understand that Joseph is understanding what he must do. I don't think he's just doing this blindly. I think he's doing this with intention at this point.
I understand what you're saying there, but my question was, are you implying or saying that Joseph thought of his father as Israel rather than as a Jacob? In other words, as a person rather, or not a person, but some spiritual being. I don't know. I'm asking.
Okay. First, I'll let Rabbi Mary.
Well, Gail, if you look at the writing, and let's go literally, okay, as a piece of literature, the one that's using here Israel, and it says it several times, Israel, 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 if you see, I think it's the narrator.
Yes.
Someone who's telling the story. At no time Yosef says, hey, Israel, my father. It doesn't, that kind of thing. It says, and Israel did this and Israel did that. It's someone outside that's telling us the story. Because
Okay,
when they
I think that's a
speak,
very
it
good
says,
interpretation.
Vayomer, and this said.
Right.
So here is, you can call it God, that's fine with me, but it's an outside voice telling the story.
No, I understood that part,
Narrator.
Mary, but Marty was, Marty was hinting that somehow Joseph had insight and saw his father as a different personality or something.
No, I think from the standpoint of dream interpreter to prophet at that level, that they recognize something in common. Okay? I don't think the name at that point is going to be that critical in Joseph's eyes. And I agree 100% with Rabbi Mary. And that it's the narrator that's using it. But the reason I use...
Go to verse 8, Gail. Read 8 and keep going. Read 8.
I did.
out loud.
Okay. In Israel saw Joseph's sons. You know, I get that. But again,
Keep
it's the, it's the narrator
Yeah,
saying
but it
it's
says,
not.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't really like to be on the road when I don't really need to be on the road. And when it's wet, it's
you
always.
speak up. Guys, speak up. The rabbi is deaf. Who was speaking? Grace?
I don't know.
Joanne?
I think she was talking to
Anita.
someone about
Somebody on the
something else.
telephone.
Yeah.
Speaking loud.
She was speaking with someone else.
I think
Yeah,
it was-
I agree with Rabbi Mary that this is the narrator's input, but you can. But I still feel that there is a connection being made because of Joseph's actions.
Okay, that's all I was
It's not
asking.
just that he says. Not only I'm seeing something here that is far beyond just my dad talking.
Okay, that, I'll buy that. That was my question and you just
Okay.
answered it.
Okay. And so if we would like to, any other discussion on this part before we go on to the next? Yes, Don.
Yeah, I know once we move forward a verse, now we're really into some big stuff here with the blessings. But Joseph, who is again this high-powered executive for Pharaoh, is suddenly totally subordinate as a child of Jacob, and that everything that he's worked toward and everything he's built up, including his children, are now suddenly under the control of Jacob. So it's almost as if Joseph is under a spell here, that Jacob is channeling God's power and will to Joseph and his offspring. And we've kind of lost the thread of Joseph entirely. All those chapter and verse building up, how Joseph got to where he is and what his brothers did to him, it suddenly all vaporizes at this scene. So I'm just babbling here, but I'm kind of, I know if there's not enough time left to really get into the next couple of verses. So I'll look forward to next week.
Okay. Well, both of them have okay. David has two hands up.
Two hands because I really want to let Andy.
Okay, for both of you.
Jacob's, I'm going to use probably an incorrect analogy, Joseph's kowtowing to Jacob, all has to do with the fact that when your parents would come to visit, didn't matter how old they were, how old you are, how much better you may have done in life than they did, they're still your parents. And you listen to and you respect your parents for whatever reason it is, you're used to giving them the upper hand.
You are. And the other part of this is that as I kind of snuck ahead a little bit to the poetry section, it is amazing to me and fascinating to me how Jacob is so intuitive with the negatives and the positives of his grandchildren. And what he says about Reuben and what he says about the others are really intuitive, I think.
Yes, that's why I want to spend more time when we get to that, because it's very interesting. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Don, what occurred to me about what you were mentioning, if I got it right, or it was David who was talking with you, I don't know this person. Who's talking with David? Who's talking with David? The woman.
Oh, that's Wendy, his wife.
Okay, and you're right. The relationship, I think, Donald, is that there, and in all of us, I was an administrator, and in the hierarchy, you know, when the superintendent was there, but I was an administrator, big shot. But when I came home to see my parents, it's another environment. This is the family, and this is the official. So he has an official job, and he has the job of being a son. And as Wendy said, you know, we care about what our father says. Even when they are dead, Wendy, trust me. So it goes there. But there are two jobs.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion? Well, we have a choice. We have a choice. We can go, we still haven't fully explained then why is Joseph bowing so low? Do you greet your parents that way? Has he greeted his father before?
No.
No, this is going to be a solemn ritual that's going to take place.
I know what I do know that as my father grew older, our relationship got very more respectful and closer.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever I had a chance to talk with him, I mean, I wouldn't bow down to him, but I would treat him with enormous respect because I loved him and I respected him, and I was so upset that his mind was going, and I tried so hard to tape it together in some way so that we could still reach. And I think there was some success with that. And I think I said goodbye to him as a father and as someone that I could relate to.
Thank you for sharing that. That is very good. Yes, Chris, and then Don. Chris, you're muted.
Thank you. I would like to say again that has a lot to do with respect, devotion, and I think by now Joseph recognized that his father is a follower of God, or is a leader for God, or a spokesman for God, or prophet for God, because he has seen the proofs of it at this point where Joseph is dying, basically. And
Yaakov.
I think, yeah, he is. But I believe that when we enter the temple, at least for me, it's such an awesomeness, such a place of peace. And I know God is everywhere, but in that place especially, is such a awesome feeling and such a humbling feeling, and a place where I want to make no noise, and I want to do no anything that will disrespect the image and the spirit that dwells in that temple. And I think that's what I would recognize in some of the elders, in some of my family, and some of my friends, and bowing down will be proper to demonstrate that I am in the presence of the spirit that I know, the spirit that I worship, the spirit that I profess to follow. And there's no other choice but to really bow down. I don't bow down to anybody except God, but there's times where you embrace somebody and you are actually just saying, like Indians saying, it's like, I recognize the God in you that is in me as well. that's basically what it boils down in there to me. Thank you.
Thank you. There was someone else. Okay, I know, Don and then Joanne.
Yeah, I had the experience of being my father's caregiver for his last 7 years. And so and in that experience was having as he gradually lost his agency, is having that delicate relationship kind of have the tables turned. And at first I was kind of resentful. I didn't jump into that situation. I was kind of reluctant. Now I'm really grateful that I went through that. But I got to, internalize what it's like to become the parent of a parent. And I don't know where that pivot point is. And I keep looking for it in the verses that we read. But right now it's clearly that Jacob has all his faculties, even though he doesn't see very well. But he's still the patriarch. And we haven't got the 10 Commandments yet, but it's implied there. But I just want to say that it's a very subtle and delicate relationship change.
Very good. I see Grace. Grace agrees with you.
Completely agree with you, Don.
Yes. And yes, there is something special with that, having those moments. Yes. Joanne.
I've reread, I'm trying to talk loud enough, and this week I'm going to try my computer and see why it's so loud when I'm talking here, but you aren't hearing it. Back to 12, verse 12. Joseph then removed them from his knees. And I'm wondering if maybe all of them got on their knees to see Jacob. And now he himself is now bowing low. Maybe they also bowed low at the same time. It doesn't say that. I think it's the word his, H-I-S, that maybe means something else. It may almost be, it should be their knees, or I feel like as I'm listening to all this, and he bowed low, but they would probably go on their knees when they saw Jacob and their grandfather, or maybe all three.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah, I'm just re-looking at my problem.
Okay.
Yeah, Joanne, the word in Hebrew is not remove, but take out. So you might be right that they are already, but although next verse it says, and they bow, not just Joseph, and they bow.
Okay.
So removing from his knees could be that they were standing behind him or something. So he moved them out and then come forward, and all of them are bowing. Sorry, Ruth Ann.
That sounds wonderful.
No, I have a different translation of verse 12, which.
Okay.
Okay, my translation says, Joseph took the boys from near his father's lap.
Yeah, that's
down to the ground.
Mhm.
So maybe they were by Jacob, they weren't with Joseph. But that puts a different spin on the whole thing.
Yeah.
It does.
You want to expand on that, Ruth Ann? What would the change be?
Well, if they weren't sitting with Joseph, if they were already with Jacob, it just looks like this is the preparation for the blessing. that, I mean, when you read further on, you see that Joseph is going to go and arrange the boys. I mean, so he's kind of has to take them from away from Jacob in order to arrange them properly.
Okay.
Well, the verb doesn't match there because in the translation of Friedman, he also uses, and Joseph brought them out from between his knees. And then he bowed his nose to the ground. It took them out as if they were inside. It's the word yatsa is when something is inside, you take it out. So I cannot, I mean, if the word would have been back, it would have made more sense to me. And they were standing behind his back, and then he brings them forward. But the word is birkav. But let me tell you another translation of Hebrew. The root of knees is the same root of blessing. So, and it's blessing and it's praying. And it's connected with the knee because when you are blessed, or you so you get into the knees. So if I put, I'm not sure. It's a confusing. Joanne, you're right. Ruth Ann, both of you are right. And translations are funny here. The word in Hebrew is, and he took them out. So I don't know how you take someone out from your knee, but it was it seems like
I can do that.
They were behind his knees. And Joanne, it could be that they were tiny kids and they were standing behind his legs. You know how the little kids hold your legs?
Okay.
I don't know.
Something popped into
Chris,
my mind
there's
based on
something.
what Rabbi Mary said, but Chris, and then that's a Wendy wave.
I remember this so well. On Sunday, when we used to go visit my other grandmother, she would come, we would all come to my grandfather's lap. And it was really his lap. He would open his leg and we would all cuddle into between his legs. Some of us sit on my grandpa's lap and some of us just stood around because there was not room in the lap anymore. But that was a custom, and he would put his arms around us and he would talk to us and he would give us the weekend money, whatever. That was a costume. So I definitely know how it's to remove him from between the legs. That's what I was trying to say. That was a beautiful memory, there were like 7 of us and we all just sit in my grandfather's open legs and it was fun. So anyway, I think I know how he did it.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Wendy, you're on. Wendy is the phantom.
One of these days I'll get a camera, but my other one broke. When we talked about Joseph getting on his knees and bowing low, now we have all learned Jews do not bow their heads. They do not get on their knees to anybody. But what was the Egyptian tradition like? Was that maybe the Egyptian way of showing super respect? And since Joseph was there for so long, he gave it to Jacob both ways?
Possibly.
It's a good question. I don't know the answer, but well, Rabbi Mary has her hand. When you visit a king or queen, even today, people bow.
Yeah, and what it says is you shall, and this is the 10 Commandments, you shall not make statues and etc., and you shall not bow to them. The bowing is to foreign gods.
Right.
It doesn't say that you should not bow to me. It says for those, and that's why we don't have sculptures and statues.
God, thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings me up, while Wendy still has it, something that I really would like to share before we go. And that was one day near the end of my dad's life. He and I were just walking down in the garden and not saying anything. And then he looked at me, and I could tell he was shaking. And I looked at him, and we embraced. And the embrace got, as soon as the embrace started, it got very hard. We embraced very hard for over a minute without saying a word. And then when it ended, the way I would like to remember it is I looked at him, smiled, and said, "There, do you feel better now?" There were no words, but no words were needed. And I wanted to share that with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very good. On that note, unless somebody has another idea that they want to bring to the fore, I think that we can call it a day. And then we will pick up with this same verse next time and read on. So thank you, everyone. Oh, okay. Several people have their hands up. Okay. Yes, you go ahead, Joanne.
Okay. While we were speaking the last 2 hours, I was becoming very hungry, and I asked Gary for a pear, P-E-A-R. He brought me 2 pillows, a pair.
Ephraim and Manasseh. One was Ephraim and one was Manasseh.
Yeah.
So the next time any of you are reading, you have the option of emphasizing the different words in what you're reading, and you will come out with a totally different meaning. Okay? And then you have to see how it fits each one of these interpretations. So and David opened with his reading, and that too provokes your own way of emphasizing the different words that are spoken, and that will convey the message that you want.
And
He's a good storyteller.
And while we are on that subject, I want to congratulate you, Marty, to give you the highest compliment I can, and that is you are a wonderful teacher. Thank you.
Well, thank you, but
Thank you, Marty.
thank you very much, everyone, but it's not necessary to do that. It embarrasses me. It embarrasses
Oh,
me.
that's okay.
So-
Marty, we're not embarrassing you, and we're not bowing before you, but we do
No.
recognize you're a good leader.
No, I just like to,
You are right.
well,
Marty,
Yes.
thank you.
Marty,
Thank
when
you.
you get a compliment, you should only reply with "thank you."
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
That's it. Thank you.
But you have to know what happens to me too.
No,
I always, oh golly. But thank you. But every one of you contributed in such a way that brought these few words to a much higher level. Okay, and I don't think we're going to forget these words, how we go about and how we're going to read words again. And I want to thank Dr. Fletcher in his book, Words, Wonderworks.
a wonder word.
Okay, so it's another plug for that book. And thank you, everyone, for sharing.